Hello all, and welcome back to the YouTube channel of All Day Chess TD. So, I finished my beginner chess lesson series. You guys have checked out my website. If you haven't, the link will be in the description below. And we're going to start a new series called the GM Game Analysis Series. This GM Game Analysis Series will feature one game per video where two GMs face it off on the war of the chessboard. Anyways, guys, we're going to start. This game is between Vishy Anand and Peter Leko. And by the way, so I don't forget, please guys, if you like this content, go down and subscribe and hit the notification bell. And please like the video if you can. Anyways, as I was saying, this is Vishy Anand versus Peter Leko. Vishy Anand is from India while Peter Leko is from Hungary. They are both one of the best players in their countries. So guys, this is a really cool match. Now, let's dive into it. This is Vishy Anand's Petrov defense. The Petrov defense starts with e4, where white controls the center, e5, black takes his fair share, white develops his knight, attacking the black pawn, and black develops his knight, attacking the white pawn. This is a very drawish opening, so I would not recommend it for beginners to play. But the idea here is, after knight takes pawn, you can play d6, attacking the knight, and only after the knight moves, then you take. You do not want to take, after the knight takes here, you do not want to take back. This is not very good for white. As you can see, the valuation bar is rising up. And it can get very complicated after white plays queen e2 and maybe some attacks on your king with also the knight being pinned. Because the knight can't move because the king will be in check. So, what happened in the game was very similar. So after Peter Leko brought his knight back, Anand took the pawn. Now Peter Leko gains control in the center, and so does Anand. Now Anand has a very strong knight on e4. And this is called an outpost, where you have a piece, or most likely a knight. It's supported by a pawn, and it's in enemy territory. So if you're white, ranks 4, 3, 2, and 1 are called your territory. And for black, it's 5, 6, 7, and 8. So let's continue. Both players have normal development here, while Peter Leko's castling, and Anand's bringing out his bishop. And now Peter Leko strikes in the center with c4. This is a nice move. And Anand's next move is also pretty cool. He brings his knight to b4. Usually bishops are a little bit better than knights, though their value is the same. Here Anand wants to trade off his knight for this bishop. So Peter Leko does not allow that, and he brings his bishop to e2. And now Anand castles. Up until this point, it's all theory here. And now Peter Leko kicks out Anand's annoying knight, and Anand brings it back. And then there's a couple of trades in the center. And after Peter Leko develops his knight, attacking the queen, Anand trades off his knight and develops his bishop. Now Peter Leko brings his rook into the center, and Anand does the same. And bishop f4 here, getting a nice bishop, and rook ac8. So players were prepped, and so nothing big here. Though here, instead of rook ac8, Anand could have played bishop to d6, which would have stopped the bishop from having an all-powerful diagonal. But the move isn't so bad itself. And now h3. Peter doesn't play the best move itself, though, these are small inaccuracies, so they don't affect the position that much. And now Anand plays a pretty nice move, bring his bishop into e4. Now he has a strong bishop in the center. And now Peter Leko plays knight d2, wanting to play c4 and attack. Though this wasn't a really good move, as Anand can just take on g2, and that's a free pawn. And plus it's in front of the king. And as you can see in this game, white's king gets a little bit exposed. Here, Peter Leko plays bishop g4, but as you can see, from Peter's point of view, he has two amazing bishops who are just striking down on the enemy queen side. And now, Anand plays a pretty tricky move, bishop h1. This is a very tricky move, as now you can bring your queen over to g2, which is checkmate. For example, if Peter Leko plays a4, you can play queen g2, which is checkmate. So obviously, Peter doesn't fall for that. And after bishop h1, Peter plays f3, stopping the queen and bishop from having the diagonal. Now, Anand brings his bishop to h4, attacking the rook. Peter moves his rook, and Anand plays f5, attacking the bishop. So now the bishop is trapped, and this is what's going to happen. After bishop h5, Anand plays g6. Both the light squared bishops are trapped. It's pretty cool. So the king takes the bishop, and Anand takes the light squared bishop. So now both the light squared bishops are off the board. Now Peter Leko throws in a check, and Anand moves his king. Next, Peter Leko brings his queen to f1, and Anand puts his bishop back. for a little bit more safety. And then as you can see here, Peter brings his rook to b1 to control a semi-open file, and this pawn will also be under a little bit of attack. Though you shouldn't worry about those pawns that much, because they aren't important in the middle game, though they are very important in the end game. So here, Anand brings his knight back, which guards this pawn on b7. And now after bishop g5, this move isn't great, as black can trade the bishops and control the g file, which is actually what happened. So Anand takes, Peter Leko takes back with his rook, and Anand can play rook g8. Now Peter Leko trades the rooks, and as you can see here, Anand controls this file. So now the king can't come anywhere here, or neither can the queen, as the rook controls this whole file. And now queen e2 is played by Peter, and knight g6, trying to bring the knight into action by Anand. Now rook b5, and queen c6, and rook takes f5, and queen takes e3. So now they're basically just trading some pawns, and after rook d5, he takes the pawn on a3. And after king h2, Anand is up 2 pawns. As you can see here, the valuation bar is minus 2.449, basically 2.5, which basically means if white had 2 more pawns, the position would be somewhat equal. That's what the evaluation bar is. In a future upcoming video, I'll explain what an evaluation bar is and how to analyze your games and that sort of stuff. Here, Anand brings back to queen f8, and he's trying to prepare a knight here, and which will attack the rook and the queen at the same time. And now Peter doesn't allow that and plays queen e6. Now Anand plays queen f4 check, and after king h1, he plays rook f8, doubling up on this pawn on f3. Though he can't take right now because it's guarded by the knight, and queens are way more valuable than knights. And after Peter Leko brings his queen back, h4, rook d7, and rook f7. Here, Anand wants to trade off the rooks most possibly, and he doesn't want to allow Peter to eat up all his pawns here. So now Peter throws in a check, and Anand brings his king up. And now Peter Leko activates his knight, and Anand takes the pawn now. And Peter takes back, and Anand takes back. Now Peter Leko blunders another pawn. And now this is game over, basically. That's very easy to convert at the top level. Now after knight c5, attacking b7, Anand pushes b6. And after knight e6 check, Anand plays king f6. So here, as you can see, black is up pawns. And in the endgame, as I told you guys before, pawns are very important. So after Peter takes another pawn, Anand plays this very cool idea. He doesn't care about these pawns on the queen side. He's just going for king activity and maybe even checkmate, as the king is very restricted. So here Anand takes a pawn, and after the king moves, he stops the king. As you can see here now, the king is sort of in a mini box, right? Which is pretty cool. This is the box. And now after knight b5, attacking the pawn on a7, Anand brings his king in. And now white takes the pawn on a7 and h3. Oh no. Guys, and remember our special rule. If the pawn gets to the end of the board, it can become a queen. So, Peter Leko needs to stop that too. And after he plays knight c6, king g4. Now as you can see here, black's given up almost all of his queenside pawns. But he's bringing his king in with some mating pattern. And after rook a8, king g3. And this is a really nice move, as rook d1 is checkmate. So Peter has to guard that. So he plays rook a1, because now after rook d1, he can just take the rook. And now he plays h2 check. King h1 and knight f4. Now the knight comes in the party. Guys, when you are attacking the king, you want every single thing in the party. As I like to say, everyone in the party. And after knight e5, he plays rook e3. And now after rook d1, the ultimate mistake, Anand plays king h3, and after knight f7, rook g3. And now Peter Leko resigns, as this is over, as white's king is very unsafe, and black is up 2 pawns. This is what would have happened if the players decide to play on. These are the best moves by the computer. Rook g3, d5, knight e2, rook d3. Sort of the only hope, because now rook g1 is checkmate. So now rook takes d3, and you can't play rook g1 here actually because the rook is pinning. So now rook takes d3, knight g5 check, king g3, and knight e4. As you can see, this is what happened. And here black is up a piece and 2 pawns, and white has no hope. So this is why Peter Leko resigned. Guys, I really hope you liked this content, and please, once again, please subscribe and hit the notification bell and like the video. That's all from me now. Hope to see you soon.